We are pleased to invite our first speaker for the evening, Ms. Mriganka Saxena. She received her B.Arch degree from TVB School of Habitat Studies, New Delhi, and MSc in City Design and Social Science from London School of Economics. She's an architect and urban designer with over 17 years of experience in the field of urban design and planning in UK and India. She has worked extensively with both public and private sectors with a focus on design-led policy and tools for effective delivery in the areas of transit-oriented development, mobility, sustainable master planning, and restoration of natural water resources. Can we please have on stage Ms. Mriganka Saxena?
Thank you. So I'm here as partner HTAU, but I'd be speaking with sort of different hats today. One of the hats is that of an ex-senior consultant with the Delhi Jal Board, where I had the mandate of restoring the drains and water bodies in the city of Delhi. And the other hat that I would be wearing is also a former one, where I was a research fellow with the Yamuna River Project of the University of Virginia, where I wrote a paper on governing water and looking at administrative structures for making restoration of water bodies more active in the city, in the country rather. Just to get back, I mean, we already saw some facts. 21 cities, Indian cities will run out of groundwater by 2020. 600 million Indians are facing high to extreme water stress in the country. And we stand at position 120 out of 122 countries in the water quality index. Take the case of Bangalore, which has an estimated GDP of 110 billion USD, contributes to 38% of the total IT exports in the country. And just recently, you would have seen in the papers, Bangalore is actually contemplating stopping the construction of apartments in the city for the next 5 years because there isn't enough water. So we're looking at a situation where we are thinking of actually jeopardizing economic resilience, growth, because water becomes a scarcity. Just to add to that, we're at the cusp of urbanization. I mean, we haven't even hit the urbanization peak yet. We are at 377 million urban dwellers. By 2050, we would be 900, which is three times the current population of the United States of America. And it's not only the top 100 cities that we talk about that would be facing this stress. Urbanization is going to hit all 7,500 urban agglomerations in the country, water being a key point there. Water and mobility, two major aspects that are going to plague cities in our country. There's always been an intrinsic relationship between urbanization and water-based ecosystems. How we built traditionally, each building responded to its geography, its hydrology, its climatic setting, mineral setting, its social and economic realities. What that led to was the collective response ensured that there was a sort of happy coexistence between each of these settlements and the larger ecosystem. While the intrinsic sort of interdependence stays, but urbanization has actually begun to mar ecosystems and in turn creating a threat to the viability of cities across the world globally. I'll talk about the Delhi picture. That's where the projects are based on. That's where my experience lies. And the story is not really blue, neither is it very green. Just to give you a bit of background, in 2016, Delhi was up to something big. It was the vision of the then CEO, Mr. Keshav Chandra of the Delhi Jal Board. And I saw an advert in the paper which said we're looking to recruit consultants, senior consultants and consultants, because Delhi government has decided to execute all works related to the cleaning of static and flowing water bodies through Delhi Jal Board. There are over 1,000 water bodies and 22 minor drains. It's important to read the bit of text in the blue. It says, from the past experience, it is apparent that all such future efforts to clean water bodies have to be situated in the realm of urban planning and landscape. It was a paradigm shift. The second largest utility company in the world was actually trying to set up a cell, a multidisciplinary cell, within the department, and the cell consisted of urban designers, planners, water experts, hydraulic experts. I was fortunate enough to lead this cell and to put in place the mechanism of how one should go about doing this. The first thing to understand was the basic context. So Delhi is divided into 3 drainage basins, the Najafgarh, Barapula, and Shahadra. Najafgarh being the largest, it's also the largest polluter of the Yamuna. In the 22 kilometers that flows through Delhi, 70% of Yamuna's pollution comes from the Najafgarh basin. The Najafgarh basin is about 500 kilometers of drain length. It houses 52% of the Delhi's population and about 67% of the area of the NCT. It's massive. Looking at water bodies, there were over 1,000 water bodies. Now they're down to about 960, maybe a few less as we speak. Most of these are dry. Some of these are dry, not most. Some of these are dry. Most of them have sewage in them. But the hydrology of all of these essentially have been destroyed because of unplanned urbanization. You look at the ownerships, there are about 11 different agencies that own these water bodies. And water bodies in the context of India is treated as land. It's not an asset. Jiski zameen, uska water body, right? So it does not depend on whether it's your mandate to maintain a water body, it would be there because it's your land. Most of it is with the BDO or the Block Development Officer in Delhi, which means it's with the Rural Department, Rural Development Board of the city. Issues consistent across scales. We are looking at poor water quality, of course, with high contamination levels. The main reason for that is 45% of Delhi is currently unsewered. So based on the local natural hydrology, all the sewage flows through the stormwater drains into the larger catchments, finally into the Yamuna. Sustained solid waste deposit, sustained sludge deposit. There is historical sludge that has been collecting in all of these water bodies and drains over years. Whatever dredging does happen during the monsoon is only to alleviate flooding, but not to restore the health of a water body. And of course, regular inflow of septic. So you would often find, I mean, if you go walking along drains, which I'm sure you don't, if you did, you would see tractors which would be sort of pouring out septic into these drains as very, very regularly. There is a larger issue. While these are physical issues, there is a larger issue of a sustained degradation of the economic, ecological, and social value of these natural assets, leading to a larger problem which is affecting millions of Delhi's residents, which is that of sustained lowering of quality of life. I mean, if you would imagine all marginalized communities are living along the beds of these drains and water bodies, and the impact is phenomenal, environmental and health impact for the city. It also comes at an economic cost. So what was the vision? Delhi Jal Board wanted to restore and rejuvenate all drains and water bodies in the city, not a small task. It wanted to restore its ecological value, economic value, and put in place management regimes that were sustainable over time. By doing that, it hoped that it would create public assets across the city that would not only enhance the amount of, or sort of augment the amount of public open space that was there, but also enhance mobility and also enhance biodiversity across the city. What was the starting point? We were 8 of us in the team. The first thing that we had to realize that one size does not fit all. We needed multiple solutions, multiple technologies for the multiple geographies that were there. Another key learning was to realize water was an urban system and had to be looked at as such. So far, Yamuna was being looked at differently, the drains were being looked at differently in sort of underground water, all separate. We had to look at it as a combined ecosystem and come up with a strategy that would look at water holistically. Of course, sound urban planning. That was very, very key, based on sound data-driven analytics. There was no data. There is no data for water anyway. So I'll tell you how we went about that. Robust delivery mechanisms. These were mechanisms that had to work with existing administrative and legislative structures, but not be hindered by it, but not be limited by the administrative structures. And of course, looking at sustainable management regimes to be able to create a legacy over time. So this was the strategy we followed. We didn't know what we had to do, so we said, let's start with pilots. We started doing pilots. Based on that, we said, let's set standards, let's put SOPs, write manuals, write toolkits based on learnings of on-ground delivery. Once we've done that, let's roll it out in phases so that there is a second loop, there is a second feedback to the standards and SOP so that we can learn as we go along. And also try and monitor positive impact. The biggest roadblock that comes in trying to do projects such as this, people say, isse kya hoga? Right? What is the benefit that our city would get? What is the benefit that the local community would get? We speak in terms of social benefit, environmental benefit. None of that is tangible. We need to have data to be able to actually measure and say, because of 5 water bodies, this is what the impact that you've had. So we tried to put in place, we didn't succeed, we tried to put in place monitoring mechanisms as well. While this was the strategy in terms of process, we also said, let's start small. Let's go sub-basin by sub-basin. If we pull our efforts or use our efforts across the city, we will not be able to make any impact. Let's try and stay small. Let's learn from there. Only then let's move out. The other thing that we did was we realized we needed experts. We needed to collaborate. All such projects need as many hands on deck as possible. So we said we are an in-house team. Let's do pilots. Let's set standards. Let's use our expertise of being in the government sector to set brief scope of work, write robust scopes of work in RFPs, and review and monitor. Let's get the best in the field to actually come and do the work. So we started the process of actually creating an empanelment of landscape architects. These were multidisciplinary consortia with agencies which could help and purify water through bioremediation. So these were joint ventures with landscape architects and such technology teams. These were the people who we were hoping would actually get down to doing the designs, the tenders, the DPRs, which would get rolled out. We didn't have data. Getting a total station survey to be done through the Delhi Jal Board could take 3 months to get the file approved, et cetera, et cetera. So we said, let's get a panel of surveyors on board so that all the data could be collected continually for all the water bodies and drains. We partnered with the Irrigation and Flood Control Department. They are sort of the implementing agencies for all works under the Rural Development Board. So they are like the CPWD for Rural Development Board. They would build your Bharat house also, and they would also restore your drains. So we said, let's work with them. Let's make them, let's sort of do capacity building for both Delhi Jal Board and the Irrigation Flood Control Department. And then we had a knowledge partner in the University of Virginia. So DGB had signed an MOU with the UVA, and many of you might be aware they're doing excellent research work over the past 6 years now in a body of work which is called the Yamuna River Project. So we partnered with them. Not only did we get their urban planning and urban design expertise, they also pulled in different sort of skill sets from their different departments. We had urban planning, we had environmental engineering, etc. Some of the best professors actually helped us set in place monitoring tools. They did pilots for us. So we had Professor Lang, one of the best in the world, to actually set up a water quality model for the supplementary drain, which linked to the Najafgarh drain and eventually to the Yamuna. So using that model, we could say if the inlet parameter of a particular drain changed, what impact it would have on the Yamuna. It was fascinating. I mean, it was a fascinating story. It's not getting used. It's sat there, but it's there. Once we had this sort of larger ecosystem of experts, of expertise, of processes that we could roll out, we moved ahead. We said, okay, what's the approach that we're going to follow? 3 main steps. Let's clean the drain and water, first of all. This was not just water. It meant cleaning the historical sludge, also managing industrial effluent wherever it was, and managing solid waste. We'll go into details of that. Then we said, once we've done that, let's restore the ecology, let's sort of restore damaged ecosystems, enhance biodiversity, etc., with the hope that eventually the economic value of these natural assets would automatically get enhanced, thereby also creating new zones for growth, for development, with opportunities for land value capture, not only for the government, but also for people living there. And these are marginalized communities. They could start getting benefit from this enhancement. So this diagram on the right, which is these 7 steps, so the first 5 steps essentially relates to point 1, which is cleaning of water bodies and drains. It's simple, identifying point and non-point sources, technologies, sludge management, septic management, and solid waste management. While doing this, we said this process also needs to be used to facilitate social needs. Every year in the city, Chhat Ghats are built. Every year they're built either as concretized tanks or temporary structures that happens every year. In 2016 or early 2017, the political sort of leadership promised to do Pakka Ghats, which essentially meant concrete tanks. And we said, there goes all our water bodies. So we said, let's do something. We'll include the Chhat Ghats in our restoration proposals. And we actually came up with very standard details of how one could do Chhat Ghats with no concrete, So these are just sort of rammed earth and grass, and it's working beautifully across. I'll show you an example for that. And then eventually also adding recreational place for all in the city. We hardly have any public open space in the marginalized communities where these water bodies are, parkway systems, and hoping that eventually once the network builds out, you could have larger regional walkway systems and cycling facilities. So that's the first pilot that we did. It's Rajokri, it's done. I would sort of request you all to go and visit it. It can be taken as a typical water body. It's a typical water body adjacent to an abadi. In most of these rural settlements, there are about 4 to 5 water bodies in each abadi. That's how the natural drainage system works, natural catchment works. So this was one such water body there. Again, consistent issues. You have encroachment, you have sludge, you have general disrepair, neglect, no sense of civic pride at all. Some of these have become sort of hotspots of crime, etc. There was no issues of crime in Rajokri, but in other cases there have been. So the in-house team of landscape architects within the Delhi Jal Board, this is Yusuf and Madhu, actually put together a proposal. The idea was to design it as a wetland park with enhanced capacity for monsoon flows, also creating, and the other thing that we realized in public sector works, the costs were very, very important. So we had to keep the costs down, very, very basic. So this was including the water treatment, and this was water treatment through bioremediation. So that here is a constructed wetland based on a phytorich system. And so the entire cost for a 1 hectare site, including 0.5 mgd of wastewater treatment, was 2 CR. Right? So it's literally half and half of it for water, half of it for landscape. So this was very robust landscape, but basic, easy to maintain, easy to deliver, cost-efficient stuff. These were the proposals. We had to get glitzy images to get approvals from all the sort of political wings and all our different technical committees, etc., etc. It worked. This is what it was, and that was the vision. This is on ground now. So that's the image on the top, is the constructed wetland, functioning well, functioning to the parameters that it's supposed to be. Kids are beginning to use it. Last year, Chhat, it got utilized. I went to site when the works were still going on, and the stone sets, this is sort of sandstone, which wasn't supposed to be there. It was just supposed to be rammed earth and grass. And each piece of the stone was a different size. All the edges were chipped. And I felt really horrible as an architect, saying, what are we building? But at the end of the day, it does not matter. The chipped edges, I really don't care. When I see the place being used by the kids of the village where they had no public open space, it's all right. It's all right, it's robust, it gets done. So I think that was a learning for me from the sort of aesthetics point of view. As long as you get the overall structure right and it's working, you've got a win-win situation. Then what we did, we said we need to, whatever learnings we've got, we need to document it so that others can use. These are 2 SOPs. So the first SOP, the SOP is sort of literally step-by-step guide of how you go about doing it. This tells you what tests to do. If you don't have enough money, you can leave text XYZ, but definitely do ABC. It goes down to that level. It's a dummies guide, literally. It tells you what to do with the sludge, how much sludge is good, how much is bad, etc., etc. The landscape team within Delhi Jal Board, led by Yusuf, also prepared a standard set of guidelines, sort of design details and guidelines, which was linked back to the cost. Once we had done a pilot in-house, the problem that we realized was that anybody and every time somebody would come in, a consultant would come in with their tender, their costs would get assessed against ours, which was a problem, right? Aapne kam ka kiya, unka to do guna aa raha hai. Which is a problem, but we did not want it to deter landscape architects from being able to deliver what they wanted to deliver. So as a tool that could be used by landscape architects, we also did a standard set of design guidelines. The other thing that our CEO did, our biggest sort of stumbling block could have been the NGT. We were looking at water bodies, we were going ahead and restoring them. So the minute we had the initial proposal of Rajokri ready, he went and presented to the NGT, which was a fantastic move. They loved it. In an order dated 19th May, they actually state that all agencies in the city must follow the approach followed by the Rajokri, and we had a stamp by the NGT, which meant we could go all out and do what we wanted to do. So I think that was the sort of biggest pat on our backs for the team, to be able to say we were on the right track and we would not get stopped. I mean, Now, so that this was 2016, 2019. The Delhi government's actually bought into the idea. They're pushing the agenda. They are currently restoring 200 water bodies. Needi is doing a lot of that, with the plan to do another 150 over the next year or so. Tenders are going out every day. I would urge all landscape architects here to actually get involved in the process. So this was the story of the water bodies. Drains are a different sort of beast altogether, way more complex. So again, we realized, we started with the supplementary drain. I mean, that's the supplementary drain, if you're aware. That's the Yamuna to the right. This is not Delhi. We are next to NH1 leading up to sort of Karnal, that highway. So this was an area, this was about 16 kilometers of drain length that we started as a pilot. It was going on for multiple years, and various people have been involved over time in the supplementary drain. So, so we started with that as a pilot, and there was no data. There was hardly any data. There were some reports that were done by the INTAC which were really helpful. But again, when it comes to contamination levels, data is changing pretty much on a monthly basis. I mean, new inlets are coming up every day, pretty much. So, so we decided to get data. We would walk the city. We would walk drains every day. One of the engineers in the team, Tausif, was a drain man. He would walk every day, map all the drains. We would map all the inlets, photographic documentation. Then we actually got tests done for each of these inlets to map them. All this data was translated onto a GIS base so that we could actually tell which were the critical points to intervene in. Again, not very glamorous, but sludge and solid waste was the biggest thing that we had to figure out. We didn't have any knowledge on how to manage sludge. Nobody knew, so we decided to figure out ourselves. We took out samples, we got them tested. Nobody knew how much it would cost, so we put labor on the ground. IFCD was brilliant that way, irrigation and flood control. They actually put labor. They said, okay, itna waste hai. Let's take 10 labor. Let's buy bags ourselves. Let's figure out manual cost of actually managing that sludge. And we got a benchmark cost for how to manage sludge. This was installed very cheaply at 1,500 rupees a running meter, and it actually works across all the drains. This was designed by a young scientist and installed across all the drains within IFCD's sort of jurisdiction. Then, based on the learnings of that, again, this design was done in-house with the Delhi Jal Board. In many ways, design is the easier part in this case because you need to sort out everything else to be able to do the design. Again, a lot of work went into actually calculating water capacities, etc. Unfortunately, nothing has been done of that yet. Again, we did a SOP for how to manage drains. This is a meatier one because a lot more issues to be dealt with. I just want to get to the crux of the problem, and that's because there's no ownership, there's no accountability, there's no mandate for water bodies in the country. This is based on my research that I've done for the UVA. It's very important to, I'll just read out one little paragraph that although urban agglomerations continue to be the biggest polluters, cities and towns are not recognized as a significant unit for planning for water resources and management. So if you look at planning policy from the national to the state levels, there is no mention of the city or the municipal boundary. What that means is, of course, it makes sense because you're working in basins levels, etc., but it misses out on a very important administrative function of where the maximum pollution is actually coming in. Nobody is looking at pollution and water at the city level. So things slip between stools when it comes to that. So, just to look at, this was the case of Delhi. I mean, you've got water bodies, natural drains, river Yamuna, hydrology. The green shows all the issues. But if you just look at the top one blue box, there are 11 different agencies for water, 4 different agencies for drains. You have, again, river Yamuna, there are 26 stakeholders. And then, again, groundwater is about 5 or 6. So, and nobody's first mandate is to restore water bodies. Obviously, there's going to be a problem. So the solution really is to be able to have this is something that I've been pushing for. If you guys have connections, please use it. It's about having a 3-tier administrative structure from the state down to the municipal corporation. And that's the only way I think water bodies in our cities and at the state level can be managed. So, which is essentially looking at making protection, conservation, reclamation of water bodies a priority at both the state and the Water Resources Department. So this is a new division that one must create at the municipality level and at the state level, and actually have a water wing. So while you're doing solid waste management as a municipal commissioner, while you're doing collecting property taxes, etc., there needs to be a department. You have a department of environment, you must have a department of water bodies in it. And I think that's the only way with how legislation works, that one would be able to get all of this under the mandate of one agency. And that's when it will start being read as a system rather than individual sort of isolated water body systems in the city. Thank you. I'll just stop there.